but inside.
This week on New to You, Spring, Part 4. Spring Bakers, bitches! Spring
Forever.
Harmony Korine's Spring Breakers.
He waits with that same lonely look on his face, plus a feeling of disgust like everything's a waste. He was made to be.
Hey everybody, welcome to the fourth and final in our spring series. The previous weeks we had Ferdinand the Bull, Mates of States Rearrange Us, and Ultimate, the Frisbee disc sport. So this week we're going to wrap it up with a pick from Jules, but before we get into that, New to You Show is a review podcast where we talk about media, stuff that we're into, things that we want to introduce to people, and sharing it around with our friends. So I am one of your hosts, John Holt. With me is
Julian Cage.
Keith Allen Vincent.
And I'm a guest, Mary Farn.
All right, welcome back, Mary. You're going to be sharing our fourth, and this will be the last episode with you of this run. We'll get you back again.
Yeah.
All right?
All right.
If you want to.
If I want to.
Maybe if we record in the morning.
Yeah, but you have to get better at Frisbee.
Yeah.
Okay.
First.
Yep.
We'll get you back for 201.
All right. So, Jules,
301.
you're going to be up on...
Oh, no, 200, yeah.
Jules, you're going to be up on plate. Why don't we roll right into your pick?
Inside the mind, but inside the mind.
Wait, shine, little bitch. Where's the money? Money. For what? You know what? All I know is I'm not gonna sit here another day.
Spring break. How are we gonna get enough money
I don't
in
know.
time? We're the only ones still here. Spring break. Tired of seeing the same thing. Spring break. It's our chance to see something different. Spring break. Just get that cash. Pretend like it's a video game. We can do this. Spring break.
Cool. So my pick is the 2012 film Spring Breakers, directed by Harmony Korine. What drew me to the film was, first of all, like, I'm kind of Harmony Korine. I've kind of have a fondness for his films. They're always delightfully weird and full of odd characters and so forth. And so just knowing he makes a film, I usually want to check it out. And this one was kind of like one of his biggest releases on top of that. Like, it was his most sort of quote-unquote commercial film, in part because it had big-name stars and kind of a more like poppy kind of candy-coated neon vibe to it. I would say it didn't disappoint. And so it's definitely the darker side of spring, the side of spring I tend to avoid typically. I don't know. You could sort of say it's like a comment or a critique on that the spring break, college spring break culture of like drinking, drugs, and all that, and partying and all that kind of stuff. And it's also like kind of trashy America, which is something I think is kind of a theme with his work. But it's also like totally trippy. Like, it's a somewhat non-linear, almost like music video-esque or dreamlike kind of film, where there's kind of a plot, but it kind of comes in and out, and you can tell that they just kind of followed the thread sometimes. And there's a mix. There's definitely a lot of non-actors. They put the actors in real situations and stuff like that.
Some of them play the main characters, some non-actors.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's something he's done a lot in his previous films as well, but this one has definitely got a different flavor. So I guess I'll talk a little bit about the sort of plot that there is. So it's basically 4 college girls who are friends, more or less close, I think, who go on spring break together, and 2 of the 4 are real, like, I would say they're almost like psychopaths, maybe. Like, they're kind of crazy. They're crazy. Like, they're the party girls, and they kind of like rope their other 2 friends who are more, I think, kind of more like, one of them in particular named Faith is like, and it's like it's no accident she's kind of the goody 2-shoes, and she's played by I'm terrible with names. Yes, by Selena Gomez, who was at the time the movie came out, like, she was at at like the height of her, like was she from like High School Musical or something? Or
No,
what
no.
was it?
I don't know.
Jennifer Hudgens was in High School.
Vanessa Hudgens.
And Selena Gomez was from another like either
It's
Disney
like a
or
Disney.
Nickelodeon
She's
show.
a Disney property.
Yeah, so there were two like
Or Nickelodeon. I'm not sure which one, but yeah.
so there were two of the four actresses were like, you know, basically big teen idol kind of girls who were like had very kind of clean images. So that was a big part of what made this sort of sensational as well. And so they kind of roped them into going, and they don't know that to get there, they like did a bunch of coke and then like robbed the place and stole a car and then burnt it and stuff. So they kind of get brought on this wild ride by these two party girls, and they're a little bit like uncomfortable with it. And so that's kind of one of the tensions or one of the dynamics in the film. And essentially like throughout the film, like those two girls like kind of go deeper and deeper into kind of like darkness, I guess, the darkness of spring break. And at some point in their misadventures, they encounter this white rapper / drug dealer named Alien, played by James Franco. And it's a really like crazy performance by James Franco. At some point, the two kind of more like sane girls like end up leaving, and then the other two stay behind, and kind of the movie kind of shifts into this like their whole like gangster misadventures or whatever. And I would say it gets even more trippy at that point. And that's where like it really veers from reality, and but has some of the more like hilarious scenes. I think that's basically the movie. Right? I mean, I mean, it's more like it's not.
Well, it does have resolution of sorts.
Yeah,
there is a climax between the relationship of the two remaining girls and Alien. It is pretty much organized in the way that Jules just described it, where he's like, and then and then the end happens.
and there are some like they do like a little bit of playing with time and the editing and things like that, but it's just to enhance the dreamlike quality of it, and it's really more like a movie to be experienced.
Well, and that's what you shared the like Vice interview of him, and he was saying like
him who James Franco or
Harmony Korine.
Okay,
and he was saying like this is a like the narrative is very fluid, and it's an experiential piece, not a strict narrative. And it's a lot of like repetition and like intentional like looping and falling back into patterns, and is supposed to sort of mirror like a drug trip, like being on drugs, and these sort of like things that are flashing forward and back, and time is very fluid, and you're just like experiencing the same things in slightly out of order, and it's all sort of like structured in odd ways, but it's supposed to feel and be like you're experiencing it through this haze, similar to what the characters are inducing themselves, like a similar state.
Yeah, and the cinematography is very like also like hyper color, like super neon, and which kind of adds to the surreal quality of it.
In that same interview, he's told the cinematographer, who's this, again, he'd never worked with all these crew, but these are like professional, like this is a great cinematographer. He basically told him like, I want it to be like it was lit with Skittles. Like that's how poppy he wanted this thing to feel.
Well,
like,
but as a contrast though, there are a lot of moments like when they're in college or when they're on the bus where it's all gray.
Yeah.
To kind of contrast like, oh, they're in like
reality.
spring break party mode is neon, colors jumping off shirts, and then when they're like when the kind of the defeated girls are going home, it's like a gray drab type of a thing. So sorry to interrupt.
No,
and then one more piece that really I think like his intentions. When he in that interview he lays out his intentions for making the film, and it's like he ticked all his boxes. Not in like he had a laundry list, but sort of like, he's saying he didn't want anyone to like rest or like become comfortable in this thing. Like there are moments that just are supposed to jar you. So it'll go from, and the soundtrack is part of that with Skrillex, where you have, these like beautiful, like slowed down scenes of like people partying, and then it'll go like, bow, 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 and kind of like break, and the imagery is a little like cruder in those moments. And it was interesting, like just to see
And some of
how
it
he's
like
using-
actual footage. I
Yeah.
feel like I feel like a lot of the imagery is just kind of like almost documentary.
Yeah, it's very
footage.
documentary like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it's this weird mix of like, it's half sort of alluring and half sort of repulsive.
Right.
And it's this weird mix of like
It's America, baby.
yeah. Yeah.
Well,
it's-
what's interesting too is that's he's talked about this in the interview, but it's also like it's pop culture stuff, like pop idols,
Yeah.
being like taken to their extreme,
yeah.
and he didn't, he
You
didn't
mean-
want to make it.
You mean
pornographic.
Selena Gomez and
Yeah,
Vanessa.
like Selena Gomez, but like it's also that
The image of a pop person like Alien,
Right.
like the
And-
rapper guy
and
too.
also when we're growing up, like specifically our age range, and Harmony Korine's like a couple, maybe he's like 41 or something, right? Like, and so he's about our age, and his like my perception of Spring Break is what we would see on MTV Spring Break, and where you're seeing like Myrtle Beach or Miami or whatever, where these kids have gone down and they're just acting crazy, and they're acting crazy for the cameras, and there's some production to it, and it's all built around this
excess,
and
excess partying, excess. Yeah.
and so you have these girls who are drawn to that and want to live that lifestyle as well. It's that sort of like pop culture, like true like pop idolatry kind of stuff, where they go down and kind of just get to go to live out the gangster lifestyle that, like, again, MTV also kind of like props up and says like, blinged out, like,
Well, I kind
crazy,
of feel like too
cribs.
that this wasn't set in like 2012. I feel like, right? I feel like it was set like in the early 2000s or something, because they were singing Britney Spears songs.
yeah, that threw me off too.
Yeah, and the cool car that Alien was driving was like I feel like a 2000 aughts like Camaro type of a thing.
They didn't really show iPhones or
Yeah.
smartphones.
They
Did
did.
they?
Yeah, everybody
They did
spoke-
have cell phones, like they were calling their.
But were
phones.
But
They,
did they
like-
look like Apple? Were they like
Were
smartphones?
they like our
or-
flip phones?
Yeah, they were little smartphones.
Yeah, maybe they were just. Maybe he was
Maybe,
just
yeah.
kind of evoking those.
But I think you're
At
right that
times.
it's like it is still sort of like probably like early aughts.
Yeah, because even the images of the guy Alien, I don't feel like are what a 2012 like rapper guy, the same kind of like persona that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like he's like of the era of like The Game and those
Right,
like
and
West Coast
Cribs
guys.
and-
Yeah. But I might be wrong about that. It's just kind of what I felt from
Yeah.
it.
Well, and I think it's also partly like it's a little bit like not like maybe they were trying not to make it too time specific, and also like Alien is not really a rapper. It's sort of like probably what he grew up thinking a
Yeah.
rapper was. Is a little bit how that my take on that character. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I mean it's also like kind of there's definitely some. It's a bit uncomfortable. It's a bit of it like white appropriation of
Oh yeah.
black culture stuff and.
I mean, I think that's definitely a part of that
Yeah.
character. But let's go back into Harmony Korine for just a moment, though. Like, so his first
Go back to his
first big one was probably Kids, right?
yeah. He
Which
wrote
he was just
wrote
the
this
writer. For
he wrote the
not
screen.
us, but he was the writer.
Yeah, he wrote the screenplay for Kids, which was like made a big splash and was very controversial.
And-
Directed that.
and
with
after
Larry,
that-
Larry Clark directed that.
And after that, it was pretty much just like ultra indie movies for a
Yeah.
while, right?
Yeah, like
Gummo,
I feel
Julian
like
Donkey Boy.
when Spring Breakers came out, I remember when that movie came out, I was just like, "Whoa, Harmony Korine's still doing stuff."
yeah,
'Cause so am I wrong? Was there a big gap in his
No, there was
making
one.
movies?
Well, it was what, Gummo, then Julian Donkey Boy.
yeah, that's the last one I remember.
Then there was one more after that.
there was Mr. Lonely,
Mr. Lonely. Yeah.
which was like a Michael Jackson type character.
Yeah, it was Michael Jackson and Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, it was like two impersonators
impersonator.
meeting up. There was another one called Trash Humpers, which I don't know anything
Yeah, I
about.
never see that.
And then Spring Breakers, and it looks like he's got a movie coming up called The Trap coming out this year.
Cool. And in that same Vice interview, he actually he was saying like people wanted him, like, and he basically kind of gets to the point that people want him to make something pornographic and shocking.
Yeah.
right? Because he's Harmony Korine. That's kind of what kids had in a big way. Like, and people are like, why don't you make something NC-17? But he addresses directly, like, he wants people to see this stuff. Like, he's not part of his art is not that factor. He wants people to see it, and it's a distraction. So for this piece, he wanted it to be accessible. He wanted it to show in theaters, and so people could go see it and not, like he says, he doesn't want to be hitting his head.
I find that interesting though, that he takes that take, because I feel like he doesn't give a crap about what people want usually. So it's interesting that you say that, because most of his movies, I'm just like, who's the audience?
Well,
for
he's kind of playing against expectations.
Yeah.
Towards the expectation.
But it's not what the audience wants. It's more that he wants the audience to see his movie.
to be able to.
Right. Because again, if you have an NC-17, like Julian Donkey Boy doesn't get a non-art house release, even though, it's not.
Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't have just having James Franco, I think, is what made him be able to get the actresses that he got, and therefore suddenly that movie is marketable. You know what I mean? But without those names, this movie is not marketable. And it would have just been in that list of movies we hadn't heard of. You know what I mean?
Well, I think it helps that, like, in Making Kids, it was super controversial, but it was controversial in a, like, this is a piece of art controversy. Like, it's very...
Or it could be considered art.
But
like, is this art? It's starting the question, I guess.
Right,
yeah.
and that in and of itself can make it...
Absolutely, yeah.
So then, from there, like, Gummo is very experimental. The fact that, like, Chloe Sevigny and him have been tied for a long time throughout his career, I think helps the fact that she became more, like, mainstream, in quotes, helped, like, qualify his movies a little bit. And, once he gets to Julian Donkey Boy, like, that's a pretty, like, star-studded cast from up to that point. Like,
I don't think... it's
in
got
terms
Werner Herzog, but who else is in there?
It's still an indie cast, but it's like Spud from Trainspotting and Chloe Sevigny and Werner Herzog. So at that point, like, the brunt of his cast is not a bunch of unknowns like you had. Like, Kids was relatively unknowns, and Gummo was almost entirely unknowns, except for maybe Chloe and a few I
feel like
counterculture stars.
Gummo was like a little bit like we were talking about that movie the other week with Matt, where it's just kind of like turn the camera on these wacky people and see what happens.
But there's like scripted moments in it. It's just
like there are scripted moments in that Toad Road movie.
But the thing is, I thought that about, like, I totally thought that about his films, that he's just that, and I thought there was a lot more. I saw them as being kind of a lot more exploitative.
Yeah.
But then I read his book of short stories, which is called A Crack Up at the Race Riots.
Yeah.
And poems, which is important.
Yeah. And like everything all the stuff that he wrote, like, could have been a scene in Gummo. So that kind of, after I read that, I gave him a lot more credit for making these weird scenes happen from his imagination, and then just finding the right people to fit that mold. Because I really don't think I think sometimes there were certainly improvised moments, but I think he does somehow create these weird moments,
And in fact, I think in Spring Breakers, he kind of is forcing it. Not in a negative way, but he's definitely taking what is the speech that they have is unscripted dialogue, and he's trying to find within that and using imagery and looping of this dialogue to make it more in the line of his, like, lyricism and the poetry that he writes. But I don't think what the people are saying is quite up to the level of the stuff that he himself writes, or when he soliloquizes, or whatever it is, when he's like in soliloquizing. Oh, right? I don't know.
I don't think
we're moving on. We're moving on.
No, but in Gummo, he's sitting
Let's not get hung up on that
but
word.
He's sitting on the couch, giving a soliloquy. He's having his speech, and it's very like stream of conscious, but it's clear that he has a specific rhythm and speech pattern, and then you can see that in the way he writes in Crack Up in the Race Riots, and then you see that in this feature as well, like the structure of the story.
I feel like I only read a little bit of that book because Plapp suggested I read it, but I feel like you get a lot more of it in Gummo. I'm sorry, in Julian Donkey Boy than in any of the other ones. And I mean, I didn't see those other ones that we talked about in the middle, but I feel like at this point so I always liked Harmony Korine because he was one of these guys that inspired me in that he did a lot with a little.
Yeah.
Right. But I feel like this movie Spring Breaker is still one that people should watch. It's still interesting, but I feel like this finally let me know that like no, Harmony Korine just isn't a filmmaker for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where I'm just like he's finally got way more means than he by all rights kind of he's got more means than he's ever had before. He's got people who can act. I mean, I don't really care for James Franco that much, but when he tries, he can kind of act in this weird kind of like melodramatic way.
Yeah.
I feel like he's really good at being James Franco. I love him in like Pineapple Express and in these kind of comedies. The one where he goes to North Korea, I think too. But in those movies, he's just being him, and it's kind of like just go. But I kind of just feel like he just doesn't have. He's getting interesting shots, and he's getting. They're really making really neat. So many really neat aspects of this movie, but it just never comes together. It just never he never brings it home in a way that makes it satisfying. This has happened in too many movies where I'm just like, well, that movie's over now, you know?
Yeah,
and now I'm finally like, you know what, Harmony, I've given you your chance, and
yeah, I think it's in part because he's not like he doesn't care about traditional structure. And because, I mean, I guess I sort of see them as they are just like a string out of vignettes.
Yeah.
And maybe they just have like the loosest of narratives just to keep them
and all of them are
going.
Beautiful in their own way for that.
And I think that's also part of the appeal for me as somebody who watches a lot of movies, because then it's sort of like it defies like your expectations, and it also you just don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know, like you can't.
That's true. There is no guessing.
Right. They're totally unpredictable, and they're always surprising. And I think that's why I enjoy them. But I agree.
Feel like they're surprising
not...
in a way that's like just not set. You know, I'm surprised because I'm like, oh, the movie's over. That was a surprise. Nothing happened.
Well, it's because they're too artsy fartsy.
Yeah. And I'm not poo-pooing your pick because I do think, you know, like we were just talking about Toad Road.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago, and I feel like that would be a good like. There are certain things that I say about Toad Road that I feel like apply to this movie absolutely. In that it's like. It's very interesting, and it's right on the edge of exploitation, even in this movie as well. But I feel like I don't know, the intention seems more pure in Toad Road, and maybe I'm just giving that filmmaker more leeway because I know that his or her means are like lower. You know what I mean? They have to make more out of less. Yeah. And I feel like this movie, he had the means to make this better or something. You know what I mean? But you know, that's just me. That's
I mean, it's not my favorite of his films, and I mean, I just picked it because it matched the theme.
Yeah.
And you know, I think it's an interesting.
And
movie.
It is a ride. It's definitely a ride.
But I think so. It's not his best or most interesting film, and I think it's more because this one, it's more like he's playing. It's less like he's just making like his art in a. I feel like his other films are more he's making art in a vacuum. Like he's making art for himself. Whereas Spring Breakers, it's more like he's playing with the audience, with audience expectations. It's more trying to do more of a cultural commentary kind of thing. So I think that's why it's quite different from a lot of his other films.
And I think too, it's neat because, you know, playing with the expectations and with the audience, like you just said, it's like somebody said, "Oh, make this really." You know, Holt was mentioning that people are kind of expecting him to push the envelope of almost pornography, right?
Well,
so the expectations
like
going into this movie are, oh man, what's Harmony Korine gonna do about a spring break movie with all these people? And instead, he just kind of holds a mirror up to like the gaudiness of it all and says, "You want a spring break movie? This is the ugliest, most disgusting kind of." I mean, that's wrong. I mean, the subject matter is ugly, and it's almost like, you want a movie about spring break? I'm not going to glorify anything. In fact, I'm going to do the opposite of glorifying it. It's not going to be alluring or like enigmatic. It's going to show you kind of like just how how the excessive it all is.
Yeah,
and
but
where it
I
leads.
think, and he said he calls to this in the Vice thing, but it's definitely also not. He's not shitting on it. Is kind of the thing, and that you see this in Gummo where it's like holding a dead chick in your hands, like you cradle it because even though it's dead, it's something like fragile. So
like
even though
Spring
it's
Break.
kind of gross. Well, no, but the idea
Fragile
is
Spring Break.
in Spring Breakers, he's showing this like it's a bright and shiny package, and that's kind of true to the thing, but it's not like it's also lascivious and it's also got some like grossness to it. But there's still like even in the grossness, there's still a lore. Like he's treating it with like not reverence, but he's definitely like trying to give it like not strip away
What is
all
the
the veneer.
it here? What is the it though? The
Spring Breakers, like he's not stripping away all the things that still keep it attractive and still like so it's not totally debased and foul. It is still
I feel like it is though. You don't
it's
think
still
so?
like young people who are still like in their prime and beautiful and in a place where they're exploring their lives and can be making bad decisions, and people survive that stuff and go on, and some people aren't impacted by it. They just go into the next chapter, go back to their lives, and it's
and
this
those
whole
people
culture.
are called white men.
Mary, what'd you think of Spring Breakers?
I disagree that it's not narrative. I thought it had a clear arc, and I enjoyed it. I can't contribute to the discussion of Harmony Korine movies because I haven't seen any of them except for this one.
Well, I wasn't
I like
arguing
it.
that there was no narrative. I was arguing that it was like, I mean, it was almost like just there was nothing complicated or interesting about the narrative. You know what I mean? The narrative was just barely anything. You know what I mean? And that was my argument about it. I wasn't saying there was no. In fact, for a Harmony Korine movie, this has got the most straightforward narrative.
Well, like I said, I can't contribute to that discussion, but I enjoyed it. It reminded me of Gus Van Sant's Elephants, which I haven't seen in a long time, so it's more reminding me of my memory of that movie.
And Harmony Korine appeared in a Gus Van Sant
Yeah, I know
movie.
they have a thing or something, but it reminded me of that in that you're watching these people in a matter-of-fact kind of way do crazy, morally depraved things, and you don't really know why. And I think in most movies, we're used to really getting into the character and understanding the character's motivations, and you just don't get that in this movie, but it's okay. It's kind of like, that's what this movie is. So that's kind of fun for me, especially to see him pull it off. Because it seems like normally if a movie did that, I would just be like, oh, this movie sucks. You don't know why the character's doing this. But I don't know. I don't care in this movie for some reason. One thing that I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know if it's a criticism or not. So they show sexy boobs and girls all the time because it's very calling to like Girls Gone Wild, Spring Break. So that seems appropriate. And we're used to that. We're used to seeing that.
There's like guys in Speedos, but yeah, it's definitely less.
No, they don't show. That's the thing that bothered me. They don't. There's a lot of probably hot guys in this, but they never
Get sexualized.
Yeah, they never like show. Oh, and here's this guy, which again makes sense because this is about you associate
culture,
Spring Break with Girls Gone Wild, and I think these girls going down there, maybe part of the appeal is, they get to do that. So that kind of makes sense too. But it's also like again getting back to the motivation thing of them like before they go down there, one of them turns to the other and says like, "I want dick." Or something like that, and you're like, oh yeah, I can't wait, and makes lewd gestures, and so it was, and then it was just sort of jarring to me to like never see them really be interested in that, like it wasn't from their point of view at all.
Yeah.
Like if they did want that, you would get some camera views of some hot guys, but you don't get that, and because we like live in a culture where what they do show is the norm, I can't tell if that's a conscious choice or if that's the norm and he wasn't thinking about showing the guys because he's
Yeah,
a straight
I
guy who
like-
doesn't show
I,
guys.
I feel like he probably just wasn't thinking about it.
Also, I like
unfortunately.
I like that though that it so much of this is from their point of view, except that aspect of it, the aspect of what's their version of sexy. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah,
What do they expect in that movie? Yeah, that's neat.
yeah. But
It reminded me when you were talking though about, and this may or may not lead to anything discussion wise, but throughout history there have always been these in so-called civilized societies. In many civilizations there have been always these kinds of like, okay, here's a week where everybody gets to just go hog wild and crazy.
Like a Bacchanalia.
Bacchanalia, like Mardi Gras and Carnival, any number of these things, and in a lot of
Christmas.
a lot of societies have had some version of that. So it's neat. It must be really a part of the human condition that we have to be civilized for all this time, and until we can just really cut loose after our team wins a basketball game, we get to burn a bunch of cars or something.
But some people choose to do it forever.
And when I say they were doing morally depraved things, I don't mean the drugs and the sex, and I don't want to get into spoilers, but I don't want to say that stuff is morally depraved.
Well, like
there's
like,
some other
like
crazy
the,
stuff.
like the bank
robbing up
and stuff.
robbing a store to be able to
Chicken
afford to
shack.
go down. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's at the beginning, and
Yeah.
yeah,
It's not too much of a spoiler.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, Mary, would you recommend this movie to your brother?
My brother? I mean, not particularly. I wouldn't not recommend it
Would
to
you
him.
watch this movie
I
with your
wouldn't go-
family down at the beach in Florida?
No, that would be uncomfortable. It would be fine. I don't know. I don't think they would really
Care?
especially like it.
Yeah. Jules, what about you? Would you watch this with your dad?
If it had The Rock in it.
Not intentionally. Like, I mean, I recently saw The Handmaid's Tale as a family outing, and that was uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, The Handmaid's Tale. Yeah, that was great. Yeah, that would be super uncomfortable with my family.
Yeah, my brother and I.
Wait, it's
my
just
brother
the
and I.
Handmaiden, right?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the
because the
Handmaiden.
Handmaid's
Oh yeah,
Tale.
Yeah,
that's,
sorry,
that's
totally
what threw me
different,
off.
totally
yeah,
different.
Yeah.
The Handmaiden.
The Handmaiden. Yeah.
Yeah, my brother and I kept looking at each other and being like, "Oh no." Of course, my parents were like fine with it, but
Doesn't mean it's not uncomfortable.
exactly.
All right. So where can people watch Spring Breakers?
So it's currently it's on Showtime. So if you have Showtime, you can watch it for free there. I guess if you're paying for it or whatever, and then you can rent it from all the usual like Amazon or iTunes or YouTube for like $3, or you can borrow it from the internet or something. I don't know.
Or there's a whole series, like a sequel on. Well, it's on Hulu. I think it's on ABC or CBS. It's a Warner Brothers Powerless with Vanessa Hudgens. Her character like kind of goes from this being in this world as a sociopath into the world of making costume gear for superheroes, I guess, in Powerless.
I haven't ruled that show out yet. It's still
Neither
still
have
getting
we.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
we're
still
watching
watching it.
I still have not watched it at all.
It's a mix.
I don't know
Yeah,
if I
it
can
is a
recommend
mix.
it, but
Right. I mean, there's so many charming people on that show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still like holding out hope for it.
Yeah.
Oh, tiny follow up. What's the show about the afterlife? The comedy. with
Good
Ted
Place.
Danson? Yeah, The Good Place. So I did watch more of The Good Place, and it did start to win me over. So
Oh,
I
good.
apologize.
Did you finish the
Quickly.
season?
I have not finished it yet because
Because he had to watch Spring Breakers like 15 times
that's
in a row.
right. That's right. But I watched like a few more episodes and I started getting like sucked into it.
So are we going to have a movie night where we watch all the rest of the Harmony Korine movies that we missed?
whoa, that would be
I
interesting.
would like that. What would it be? A Corinna? Or
Korinathon.
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 Perfect
a
harmony.
Corinning.
So a little bit of Keith's For Real Corner. For real. One of the people from Gummo was at my brother's wedding.
Whoa.
He was a classmate of my brother's.
Wow.
The guy with the grandma. Do you remember that character?
Yeah.
The guy with The grandma.
He was at my brother's wedding. I met him.
It's been too long since I've seen it.
All right. Well, thanks, Jules, for the pick.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Spring break forever, bitches.
Scared, aren't you?
Spring break forever.
Spring break forever, bitches.
My loneliness is killing me, and I must confess, I still believe.
Such a question, there are many possible answers, such as hard work.
Feel I'm alone in this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to another episode of the Nudie Show. Thanks for sticking with us for the 4 episodes of Spring. You probably are deep into American Gods by now, I would hope, and loving it.
If it's good.
Yeah, but maybe we'll talk about, or be talking about that in episodes to come. I was one of your hosts, John Holt. You can find me on Twitter at Lord Joho. You can find me on Instagram at board_ghost, and you can listen to my role-playing storytelling podcast, boardghost.com. Keith, where can people find you?
First of all, people should listen to Board Ghost. It's good. It gets better all the time. You can find me at earthlingkeith.com. Jules?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at BeautifulJules. And how about you, Mary?
You can find me at maryvarn.com and on Twitter and Instagram at maryvarn.
All right.
maryvarn.com.
Yeah.
Thank you for being with us, Mary. It's been a pleasure having you back on.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah, we
thanks
missed
for
you,
having
Mary.
me.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's fun.
So join us next week for our first episode of the Success Theme, and I'll be bringing you The Secret. And
The movie? Or the book?
the documentary, and there's also accompanying book. You could read the book. You will probably get similar information.
Well, I got to say, calling it a documentary is a kind of
It's
a...
documentary
Save
style.
it for next week.
Documentary
gang.
style.
Next week, The
and-
Secret to
Yeah.
Success.
So
with
if you
The
want to know
Secret.
what the secret is before next week, just watch The Secret, and
On
all will be
Netflix,
revealed.
right?
Yeah,
On
it streams
Netflix, yeah.
streaming on Netflix.
All right.
You might be able to find clips on YouTube, whatever. See you next week.
But before we get into that, Keith, what was new to you this week?
New to me, I was furiously researching stuff about Spring Breakers, and I stumbled upon this neat YouTube series called Secret Movies of Earth Revealed by Earthling Films. What? And it's awesome. It's this guy that does film reviews, but as an alien from like thousands of years in the future, and he helps to get
like
some
an archaeologist, sort of.
Well, kind of. It's like he always sneaks in things about like the fate of Earth in his reviews. It's really great, and there's tons of them. There's lots and lots of them. So look up. I mean, if you just type in, I think Earthling movie reviews, it'll pop up. But it's his Spring Breakers one is really great because it's neat because it'll always be, you know, this funny breakdown of the movie, but when he gives the inside of the film, it's all legit. It's all like how you should look at this film. It's really neat. It's really interesting. He breaks down, in this case, Spring Breakers, he's like, so really this movie is just about the American dream, which is excess to the nth degree. And he says, and that's why there are no more humans left.
Did you watch many of the reviews? Did you watch
Yeah, I watched them all day long, actually, yeah. Literally like 2.5 hours worth.
Wow.
Well, I mean, I listened to them while I was doing some work, but they're really fun. That's something I would just check out. They're really fun. You can just watch. They're short. Each one is probably like 6 or 7 minutes, and yeah. So
Cool. All right.
What are they called, Jules? What is it?
I think the channel, I think, is it Hidden Meaning of Spring Breakers?
Hidden meaning of, and then the movie, and then Earthling.
Yeah, Earthling Cinema is
Cinema.
the series, and
Yeah.
the YouTube channel is Wisecrack, which is like a comedy YouTube network. I've seen some of their videos before, but I had not seen this series.
These ones are the best. They're really funny. I mean, it'll autoplay sometimes some of their other ones, and they're pretty okay. But the Earthling
Hidden
Cinema
Meaning stuff.
Yeah, it's
great.
it's always called the Hidden Meanings.
But if you look up Earthling Cinema, this will pop
That'll
up.
find it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
All right. To find out more about Spring Breakers and the other topics that we talked about throughout spring, you can check out all that info on our website, nudieshow.com. You can follow us on Twitter to find out news about the show. Also, you can reach out to us on Twitter. We might actually respond through that.
Yeah, we would.
You can also email us. There's an email on the website. So, if you have thoughts or comments or suggestions, let us know. You can follow us or subscribe to us on iTunes or your favorite listening device for podcasts New Do Show on iTunes. You can leave reviews and ratings there. And you know what? Share the show with friends. Tell people about it. Tripod.
Yeah, we got to beat that new to you media people that you discovered.
gotta
so
blast
get out
them.
there and
Or maybe
leave
we'll
some
get them.
comments.
Maybe we'll get them on here and crush them on air.
crossover.
No, we're just gonna be really nicely better than them.
Yeah, it's slowly
You should
poison
just
them.
go on iTunes and flag them, or I don't know.
No, we're not suggesting
And then
anyone
while
do
you're
that.
at it, give us a review.
All right, Mary, again, thanks for being back on.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Gang, it may not be new, but maybe it was new to you.
you. Explosion sound.
Pitiful life is all about the music. This pitiful life is all about the music.
With him together forever, without the limitation of time ever again. So the second coming of the Lord is